Some buildings get constructed in places that make no logical sense, on cliff faces, inside volcanoes, at the bottom of the ocean. Engineers have pushed concrete, steel, and glass into locations that should have been impossible. These are 20 constructions built in the strangest locations on Earth. 20. Longaberger Basket Building, Newark, Ohio, USA. Most company headquarters are built to impress, but in 1997, the Longaberger Company in Newark, Ohio, took that idea further than any architect had before. Their founder, Dave Longaberger, demanded that the new headquarters look exactly like one of his handcrafted maple wood baskets, and that is precisely what was built. The result was a 7-story, 180,000 square foot office building shaped like a giant picnic basket, constructed at a cost of around $30 million. The building is a replica of Longaberger's best-selling medium market basket, scaled up 160 times. Every detail was replicated, including 2 massive steel handles arching over the roof, each weighing 75 tons. Those handles are fitted with internal heating elements to stop ice from forming and falling onto the glass atrium below. Gold-leafed Longaberger tags, measuring 25 feet by 7 feet and weighing 725 pounds each, are mounted on the north and south sides of the building, just like on a real basket. When the company eventually declined and vacated the building in 2016, the basket sat empty on the Ohio roadside, a 7-story monument to one man's very literal vision. It was sold in 2017 for just $1.2 million, a fraction of what it cost to build. Today, it still stands, still shaped like a basket, still turning heads on State Route 16. 19. Gate Tower Building, Osaka, Japan. In 1983, a landowner in Osaka's Fukushima district applied to redevelop his property. The permits were denied because the government had already approved a major extension of the Hanshin Expressway, and the planned route ran directly through the site. After 5 years of negotiation with no resolution, engineers came up with a solution that had never been tried before. They would build the office tower as planned and run the highway straight through it. The result is the Gate Tower Building, a 16-story office block completed in 1992 with a working expressway passing through floors 5, 6, and 7. The highway doesn't actually touch the structure. It passes through as a self-supporting bridge, wrapped in a soundproofed casing to protect workers inside from noise and vibration. The elevator skips from floor 4 directly to floor 8, and the Highway Authority is officially listed as the tenant of the 3 floors it occupies, paying rent to the building owner. The Gate Tower Building remains one of the most unusual office blocks on Earth. Workers inside can glimpse traffic moving through their building without hearing or feeling a thing. It was so unprecedented that Japan rewrote its city planning and highway laws after its completion to allow for similar arrangements in the future. 18. Dar al-Hajar, Wadi Dahar Valley, Yemen. In the Wadi Dahar Valley, roughly 15 kilometers from Yemen's capital Sana'a, a rock pinnacle rises sharply from the desert floor. Perched directly on top of it, growing from the rock itself, is a 5-story palace that looks as though it was carved rather than built. The structure sits so seamlessly on the stone column that from a distance it is almost impossible to tell where the rock ends and the building begins. The foundations of the site date back to 1786, when Islamic scholar Imam Mansur ordered a palace to be constructed on the pinnacle. In the 1920s, Imam Yahya Muhammad Hamidan, the ruler of Yemen at the time, expanded it into a summer residence. The palace features appointment rooms, a Turkish bath, and a system for cooling water in traditional earthen jars, all built on and around a natural rock spire. Only 3 of the 5 stories are fully visible from the outside. The rest are built downward into the rock itself. Dar al-Hajar is now a museum open to visitors and is considered one of the finest examples of traditional Yemeni architecture. Its image appears on the 500 Rial Yemeni banknote, a reflection of its status as one of the country's most recognized landmarks. It has survived for over a century in a region battered by conflict, still standing on the same rock that builders chose over 300 years ago. 17. Santuario Madonna della Corona, Mount Baldo, Italy. On the vertical cliff face of Mount Baldo in northern Italy, roughly 2 miles from the eastern shore of Lake Garda, there is a church that appears to hang in mid-air. The Santuario Madonna della Corona sits on a narrow rock shelf more than 2,500 feet above sea level, with nothing but sheer cliff above and a deep valley below. From a distance, it looks less like a building and more like something that grew out of the mountain. The site has been used for religious purposes since around the year 1000, when hermits from the Abbey of St. Zeno in Verona lived in the caves of Mount Baldo. A chapel was formally established here in the 13th century, and a larger church was constructed above it in 1625, completed in 1685. The only way to reach it originally was via a narrow path cut into the rock, described in medieval documents as a dangerous path in the rocks. Access stairs were added in the 16th century, and today a road also connects to the upper side of the sanctuary. The church has never been fully destroyed or desecrated, partly because its location made it so difficult to reach. In the 1970s, much of the aging structure was rebuilt by an Italian architect while preserving its most important artistic features. It remains an active pilgrimage site to this day, visited by people willing to climb a steep mountain path to reach a church that logic says should not be there. 16. Casa do Penedo, Feife Mountains, Portugal. In the Feife Mountains of northern Portugal, between the municipalities of Salorico de Basto and Feife, 4 enormous granite boulders sit on a hilltop. From a distance, they look like any other rock formation, until you get close enough to see the windows. A house has been built directly between them, using the boulders as its foundation, walls, and ceiling. Construction on the Casa do Penedo began in 1972, when a textile engineer from Guimarães bought the land and decided to build a countryside retreat for his family. Workers came on weekends and built around the existing boulders rather than moving or removing them. The project took 2 years to complete, opening in 1974. The house has no electricity and no running water. The only parts of the building not made of stone are the window frames and door. The sofa inside is built from a eucalyptus log and weighs 350 kilograms. The house became famous after it was featured in Portuguese media and spread online, drawing so many visitors that the family eventually had to move out. It was subsequently opened as a small museum. The windows have been replaced more than 20 times due to vandalism and are now fitted with bulletproof glass and metal bars. Despite this, Casa do Penedo remains one of the most visited unusual structures in Portugal, a house that exists not because the location made sense, but because 4 boulders happen to be the right distance apart. 15. Coober Pedy Underground Town, South Australia. In the remote outback of South Australia, about 850 kilometers north of Adelaide, summer temperatures regularly exceed 50 degrees Celsius. The town of Coober Pedy found a practical solution to that problem. It went underground. More than half of the town's residents live in homes carved directly into the sandstone hillsides, known locally as dugouts. These aren't makeshift shelters. They include full kitchens, bedrooms, living rooms, and in some cases, swimming pools, all bored out of rock. The town was founded in 1915 following the discovery of opal in the area. Early miners noticed that sleeping inside the shafts was far more comfortable than the surface, and the practice of underground living spread from there. Dugout homes maintain a steady internal temperature of around 22 to 25 degrees Celsius year-round without any air conditioning. The savings on cooling costs are significant in a region where surface buildings would need to run cooling systems almost constantly. Coober Pedy now produces a large share of the world's precious opal and is often called the opal capital of the world. The underground life in Coober Pedy extends well beyond housing. There are underground churches, underground hotels, underground bars, and an underground museum. Above ground, the landscape is stark and almost lunar, dotted with mining spoil, ventilation pipes, and little else. The town's name comes from the Aboriginal term Kupa Pedy, meaning roughly white man in a hole, which turns out to be an accurate description of how the place operates. 14. Nakagain Capsule Tower, Tokyo, Japan. In 1972, architect Kisho Kurokawa completed a building in Tokyo's upscale Ginza district that looked unlike anything that had come before it. The Nakagain Capsule Tower was made up of 140 individual prefabricated pods, each roughly the size of a small camper van, bolted onto two concrete cores. The pods had round porthole windows and were designed to be detachable, so that individual units could be removed and replaced as they aged. It was a vision of modular, adaptable urban living. Each capsule measured about 2.5 by 4 meters and was originally marketed as compact housing for businessmen commuting to central Tokyo. Over the years, residents used them as offices, art studios, tea rooms, DJ booths, and second homes. The building became the defining example of Japan's metabolism architectural movement, which imagined cities as living organisms that could grow, change, and shed outdated parts. In practice, the capsules were never once replaced. Maintenance was repeatedly deferred, and the building gradually fell into disrepair. By the time demolition was announced in 2021, water leaks and structural deterioration had made many units practically uninhabitable. The tower was dismantled in 2022. Before it came down, preservationists worked to save as many capsules as possible. Some were acquired by museums around the world, including SFMOMA in San Francisco. The Nakagain Capsule Tower is gone, but it remains one of the most influential and debated buildings of the 20th century. 13. Krajowy Domek, Sopot, Poland. On the main shopping street of Sopot, a coastal city in northern Poland, there is a building that appears to have melted. The Krajowy Domek, which translates as crooked house, is a commercial building whose walls, roof, and windows are all warped, curved, and twisted, as though the entire structure was subjected to extreme heat and then left to cool in that distorted shape. It spans roughly 4,000 square meters and forms part of the resident shopping center. It was completed in 2004 and designed by Polish architects Sotyński and Zaleski, who drew inspiration from the surreal fairy tale illustrations of Polish artist Jan Marcin Sancer. The building uses curved glass and reinforced concrete to achieve its distorted appearance, and no two sections of the facade follow the same line. Despite its appearance, the Krajowy Domek is structurally sound and fully functional. It contains shops, offices, and a restaurant. The Crooked House quickly became one of the most photographed buildings in Poland and one of the most recognized examples of novelty architecture in Europe. It draws visitors specifically to Sopot's Montecasino Street, a pedestrian promenade that would otherwise be a typical shopping district. What makes it unusual is not that it was built in a strange location, but that it transformed an ordinary location into one of the strangest looking blocks in the world. 12. Habitat 67, Montreal, Canada. In 1967, Israeli-Canadian architect Moshe Safdie was 29 years old when he completed a housing complex on the banks of the St. Lawrence River in Montreal that was unlike anything that had been attempted before. Habitat 67 was built for Expo 67, the World's Fair held in Montreal that year, and it was intended to demonstrate a new model for urban housing. It was made up of 365 prefabricated concrete boxes, each weighing around 90 tons, stacked and interlocked to create 158 individual apartments. The concept came from Safdie's graduate thesis at McGill University, in which he argued that high-density city housing could provide the same quality of life as a suburban home with private outdoor space, natural light, and ventilation. Each concrete unit was built on site in a prefabrication factory, fitted with kitchens and bathrooms on an assembly line, then hoisted by crane and locked into position using a system of post-tensioned cables. The result is a structure that looks from certain angles like a series of stacked pyramids, and from others like a landslide of concrete cubes. Habitat 67 is still occupied today and was designated a historical monument by the city of Montreal in 2009. It is one of the only structures from Expo 67 to retain its original function. The apartments are now highly sought after and command premium prices, a striking turnaround for a building that was originally intended to prove that good housing could be affordable. Safdie's experiment worked architecturally, but the economics never quite followed. 11. Whittier, Alaska, USA. About 60 miles southeast of Anchorage, Alaska, tucked between glaciers and the waters of Prince William Sound, is the town of Whittier. It has a population of around 200 to 260 people depending on the season. Almost all of them live in the same building. The 14-story Baggage Towers condominium, originally called the Hodge Building, was constructed in 1957 as a U.S. Army military barracks during the Cold War. After the military left, the remaining residents simply stayed put. Baggage Towers is not just a block of flats. It contains apartments, the city mayor's office, a police department, a health clinic, a church, a laundromat, a convenience store, a bed and breakfast, and a post office. Children at the local school, which sits directly behind the building, can reach it via a covered tunnel without ever going outside. For much of the winter, not going outside is a reasonable strategy. Whittier is battered by extreme snowfall, strong winds, and temperatures that make the surface hostile for extended periods. Getting to Whittier at all requires passing through a 2.5-mile tunnel, the Anton Anderson Memorial Tunnel, which is the longest highway tunnel in North America and runs in only one direction at a time, closing overnight. In poor weather, Whittier can be effectively cut off. The town's unusual design, one building, one community, one tunnel, is not a quirk or an experiment. It is simply the most practical way to survive in one of the most isolated spots in the United States. 10. Hang Nga Guest House, Crazy House, Dalat, Vietnam. In 1990, Vietnamese architect Dang Viet Nga began construction on a building in the highland city of Dalat that she had no blueprint for. She drew her plans freehand, inspired by the work of Antoni Gaudí and Salvador Dalí, and the result is a structure that looks less like a building and more like something that grew out of the ground. The Hang Nga Guest House, known internationally as the Crazy House, resembles a giant hollow tree with spiraling staircases, cave-like corridors, organic surfaces, and 10 themed guest rooms named after animals and plants. The building has no straight lines and no right angles. Walls curve like the inside of a cave. Stairways twist without railings, and narrow bridges connect sections of the building at unexpected heights. Every surface is sculptural, covered in representations of mushrooms, spiderwebs, animals, and roots. Dang used steel, wood, and concrete to achieve shapes that look entirely natural, building without a traditional architectural plan and relying on her instinct to determine what came next. Local authorities refused her permits for years due to the unconventional design, and she funded the project privately. Construction continued in stages for decades and was not declared finished until around 2010, though Dang spoke of ongoing expansion plans even after that. The building functions as both a tourist attraction and an operating guest house, with guests able to stay overnight in the themed rooms. It sits in a residential neighborhood of Dalat, surrounded by the town's French colonial villas, making the contrast between the Crazy House and everything around it as extreme as the building itself. 9. Mont Saint-Michel, Normandy, France. In the bay between Normandy and Brittany in northwestern France, a granite rock rises sharply from the sea. On top of it, covering almost every inch of available space, sits a medieval town, a ring of fortifications, and a Gothic abbey that reaches 170 meters into the sky. Mont Saint-Michel is a tidal island. At high tide, the sea surrounds it completely. At low tide, vast sandbanks emerge and the island connects to the mainland. The bay experiences some of the highest tidal variations in continental Europe, with water rising and falling up to 14 meters. Construction on the island began in 708 AD, when the Bishop of Avranches, Saint Aubert, is said to have received a vision from the Archangel Michael, instructing him to build a sanctuary on the rock. A Benedictine abbey was established by 966 AD, and the main Gothic structure, known as La Merveille, meaning the marvel, was built between 1211 and 1228. Medieval builders constructed the abbey in 3 levels on the irregular surface of the rock, using the natural shape of the granite as their foundation. During the 100 Years' War, the island's fortifications resisted English siege for over 3 decades without falling. Mont Saint-Michel is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site and attracts over 3 million visitors per year, making it France's second most visited monument. Monks still live in the abbey. Before a modern causeway was built, reaching the island at high tide was genuinely dangerous. The sand around it was treacherous quicksand, and the tide could come in faster than a person could run. The fact that builders chose this location in the first place, let alone constructed a 1,000-year-old Gothic masterpiece on it, remains one of the more extraordinary decisions in the history of architecture. 8. Monastery of St. George of Chosiba, Wadi Kelt, West Bank. In the Judean desert between Jerusalem and Jericho, a deep and narrow gorge called Wadi Kelt cuts through the rock. Clinging to the northern cliff face of that gorge, bolted into the sheer vertical wall of stone, is a monastery that has been occupied, destroyed, and rebuilt multiple times over 15 centuries. The Monastery of St. George of Chosiba hangs above the canyon floor, its walls and balconies built directly into and onto the cliff, surrounded by an improbably lush garden of olive and cypress trees, fed by a natural spring below. The monastic presence at Wadi Kelt began in the late 5th century when hermits settled in the natural caves along the cliff face. A formal monastery was established around 480 AD by an Egyptian monk named John of Thebes. It was destroyed by Persian forces in 614 AD. The skulls of the monks killed during that raid are still kept in a chapel outside the monastery walls. The Crusaders rebuilt the complex in the 12th century, after which it was abandoned again. Greek Orthodox monks rebuilt it a final time at the end of the 19th century, and it has been occupied ever since. The monastery is named after St. George of Chosiba, a 6th century monk from Cyprus who lived and died within its walls. Greek Orthodox monks still live there today, following a daily routine of prayer, manual work, and contemplation in one of the most extreme and remote locations in the Holy Land. The ancient Roman road from Jerusalem to Jericho ran directly through this valley, making the monastery a landmark on a route that has been traveled for over 2,000 years. 7. National Fisheries Development Board, HQ, Hyderabad, India. On the P.V. Narasimha Rao Expressway in Hyderabad, elevated on pale blue pillars, there is a government building shaped like a fish, not roughly fish-shaped or suggestive of a fish, but a complete, detailed, 4-story fish with scale-like rectangular windows, a set of sweeping metal fins, 2 large circular blue-tinted windows serving as eyes, and an open mouth forming part of the entrance. The building is clad in stainless steel panels that give it a shimmering metallic appearance. At night, blue-purple spotlights illuminate the entire structure, creating the impression that a giant fish is swimming through the city. The National Fisheries Development Board building was completed in April 2012 and was designed by India's Central Public Works Department. The reasoning behind the design was straightforward. The building is the headquarters of India's National Fisheries and Aquaculture Authority, and the department wanted something that made that function immediately visible. The left pectoral fin doubles as an awning over the entrance staircase, and the building is raised entirely off the ground so that the full fish shape is visible from the expressway. It was reportedly inspired by Frank Gehry's famous fish sculpture in Barcelona, though it takes a far more literal approach than Gehry's abstract form. The building has since appeared on multiple international lists of the world's most unusual structures. It is a fully functional government office, staffed daily by civil servants who happen to work inside a stainless steel fish suspended above a major highway. 6. Mymedora Monasteries, Thessaly, Greece. In central Greece, in the region of Thessaly near the town of Kalambaka, a series of massive sandstone rock pillars rise from the plain. These columns were formed roughly 60 million years ago, shaped over millions of years by sea movements, wind, and erosion into towers that reach up to 400 meters above the ground. Between the 14th and 16th centuries, Orthodox monks climbed to the tops of these pillars and built monasteries on them. At the peak of this construction period, 24 monasteries occupied the rocks. 6 of them are still active today. The first monks arrived around the 11th century, living initially as hermits in the natural caves that pockmarked the pillars. The first formal monastery, the Great Meteoron, was established in 1344 by Saint Athanasios the Meteorite. Construction on these surfaces was an extraordinary physical challenge. Builders hauled materials up the vertical rock faces using ropes, nets, and windlasses, a system of hand-cranked winches. Ropes were reportedly only replaced when they broke, which the monks accepted as the will of God. Access ladders were sometimes 40 meters long. The word meteora translates roughly as suspended in the air, which describes the experience of seeing these monasteries accurately. Today, steps have been cut into the rock faces to allow visitors access, but the sensation of standing inside a monastery on a pillar of rock hundreds of meters above the plain below has not changed. Meteora was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1988 and remains one of the most visited and photographed locations in Greece. 5. Sedinil de las Bodegas, Cádiz, Spain. In the province of Cádiz in southern Spain, the Rio Trejo carved a gorge through the rock over thousands of years. In the walls of that gorge, where the rock forms enormous natural overhangs above the riverbanks, people built a town. The houses of Sedinil de las Bodegas don't sit beside the rock or in front of it. They are built directly into and beneath it, using the overhanging stone as their roofs and rear walls. Entire streets of whitewashed buildings run under continuous rock ceilings. In some sections, a single massive overhang covers a full block of homes, restaurants, and tapas bars. The town's history stretches back to at least the 12th century, when the Moors enlarged natural caves in the gorge and built a fortified settlement. The rock provided insulation, cool in the extreme heat of Andalusian summers and warm in the cold winters. Christian forces attempted to capture the town from the Moors 7 times before finally succeeding in the 15th century. The town's name, Sedinil, is derived from the Latin phrase septem nihil, 7 times nothing, a reference to those failed sieges. The suffix de las bodegas refers to the wine cellars that Christian settlers later built in the caves. Today, around 3,000 people live in Sedinil de las Bodegas. The most famous stretch is Calle Cuevas del Sol, the Street of the Sun Caves, where restaurants and bars operate under a continuous shelf of overhanging rock. Rain falls on the overhang while diners eat dry below it. The rock is their ceiling, their shade, and their shelter, as it has been for the people of this town for nearly 1,000 years. 4. Aogashima Village, Japan. Roughly 360 kilometers south of Tokyo in the Philippine Sea, there is a small island that is itself a volcano. Aogashima is a double caldera volcanic island, a large volcanic crater containing a second, smaller volcanic cone within it. The island was formed from the overlapping remains of at least 4 underwater calderas. It is still classified as an active Class C volcano by the Japan Meteorological Agency. Around 170 people live inside it. The last major eruption occurred between 1781 and 1785, killing roughly half the island's population of about 330 people. The survivors evacuated to the nearest island, Hachijojima, and it took almost 50 years before residents returned to Aogashima. Most of the village today sits within the outer crater wall, sheltered from the open ocean. The island has no proper harbor. The cliffs surrounding it are steep and volcanic, so all supplies must arrive by boat when the sea allows, or by helicopter. The helicopter service carries a maximum of 9 passengers and is frequently canceled due to weather. Despite the risk, residents describe life on Aogashima as calm and self-sufficient. The volcanic activity provides geothermal energy and steam vents that the community uses for cooking and bathing. There are hot springs, a sauna, and virtually no light pollution, making the night sky one of the clearest in Japan. What the island cannot offer is certainty. Those 170 people know the volcano beneath them is still active, and they have made the decision to stay regardless. 3. Itha Undersea Restaurant, Maldives. 5 meters below the surface of the Indian Ocean, at the Conrad Maldives Rangali Island Resort, there is a restaurant. Guests descend a staircase from a pavilion above the water and arrive in a curved acrylic structure 125 millimeters thick, surrounded on all sides by coral reef, tropical fish, and open ocean. The ceiling is transparent, reef sharks pass overhead, turtles drift past the walls. Dinner is served in a room that is, in every practical sense, inside the sea. Itha opened in 2005 as the world's first all-glass undersea restaurant. The structure was prefabricated in Singapore and transported to the Maldives, where it was carefully submerged and anchored to the seabed. It weighs approximately 175 tons and seats only 14 guests per service. Itha means mother of pearl in Divehi, the local language. The menu features contemporary European cuisine with Maldivian influences, including Maldivian lobster, paired with a view that no rooftop restaurant on Earth can match. The engineering required to place a functioning dining room on the ocean floor was significant. The acrylic walls must withstand constant water pressure. The structure must remain stable in currents, and the life support and ventilation systems must operate reliably below the surface. Itha has been doing this continuously since 2005, making it not just one of the most unusual restaurants in the world, but one of the most durable experiments in dining ever attempted. 2. Isfjord Radio Adventure Hotel, Svalbard, Norway. Halfway between the northern tip of mainland Norway and the North Pole, on the windswept grounds of Kapp Linné, at the western edge of Svalbard, there is a hotel. Svalbard itself is an Arctic archipelago where polar bears outnumber people, and the landscape is defined by glaciers, frozen fjords, and months of complete darkness. The Isfjord Radio Adventure Hotel sits even further into that wilderness, accessible only by boat or snowmobile, with no road connecting it to Longyearbyen, the nearest town. The site was originally built in 1933 as a radio station, serving as a critical communications outpost in the Arctic. The station operated for decades before being decommissioned and eventually converted into a boutique hotel. The original buildings have been carefully restored while maintaining the remote, functional character of a working Arctic outpost. In summer, guests experience the midnight sun, 24 hours of daylight, and can hike through polar landscapes, visit walrus colonies, and take boat safaris to nearby glaciers. In winter, the darkness brings the northern lights in complete isolation from the outside world. There are no shops, no road connections, and no casual way in or out of Isfjord Radio. Every guest who arrives has made a deliberate effort to be there. It is not the most structurally extreme construction on this list, but it may be the most committed, a full-service hotel built and maintained in one of the most hostile and remote environments on the planet, in a place where most people would not consider building anything at all. 1. Al-Hajar Mountain Villages, Oman. In the Al-Hajar mountain range of northern Oman, where peaks reach nearly 3,000 meters, and the terrain drops in near-vertical cliff faces into deep canyon wadis, communities built villages that cling to the rock at heights and angles that should make construction impossible. The village of Misfat al-Abriyin sits on the edge of steep terraces, its stone houses stacked against the mountainside with traditional falaj irrigation channels running between them. The ruins of Wadi Bani Habib occupy a canyon floor, accessible only by scrambling over a dry riverbed. Higher still, As-Sab sits at the end of the Jebel Shams balcony walk, perched at the rim of what is sometimes called the Grand Canyon of Arabia. These villages were not built as feats of engineering or as spectacle. They were built because the mountains were defensible and because the Al-Hajar Range historically served as the geographic barrier that kept Oman free from invasion. The rock provided protection, the wadis provided water through ancient irrigation systems, and the terraced hillsides, carved into the stone, provided soil for fruit trees and crops. Communities survived here for centuries through a combination of ingenuity and necessity, building homes from the same stone they stood on, in places where the only way to reach them was on foot. Many of these villages were abandoned in the 1980s, when the Omani government built schools and roads in more accessible locations, and families chose to move. What remains are some of the most dramatic and haunting ruins in the Middle East: stone structures on near vertical rock faces, empty now but intact, in locations where modern builders would struggle even to lay a foundation. The people who built them had no machinery, no cranes, and no safety systems. They had stone, water, time, and no alternative. From a restaurant sitting on the ocean floor to villages clinging to near vertical mountain faces, these constructions prove that humans will build almost anywhere. What drives someone to sink a dining room under the sea or carve a home out of a cliff wall is still hard to fully explain. The line between ambition and madness has never been thinner. If you enjoyed this video and want to learn more beyond belief facts, click on the video appearing on your screen now and remember to hit the subscribe button.